There is a soft, ancient voice that echoes in the quiet of your soul, a voice that cannot be drowned out by the noise of the world, no matter how loud the world becomes. It whispers not in words, but in knowing. It does not plead for attention, nor does it seek to be proven. It simply is. And it has been with you since the beginning, since before your first breath, before your name was spoken, before you ever learned to question your worth. That voice, beloved, is your essence. And it has only one message to offer. You are here to remember who you truly are. Not to become, not to earn, not to strive, but to remember. For what you have forgotten is not something outside of you, waiting to be discovered like treasure buried beneath the sands of time. What you have forgotten is the sacred truth etched into the fabric of your very being that you are divine, not in theory, not in metaphor, but in the deepest, most literal sense. You are the breath of the infinite, poured into form, moving through time only to find your way back to timelessness. The world did not teach you this. The world taught you to forget. It taught you that your value is contingent, that your worth is conditional, that who you are must be proven by what you achieve, by how you look, by how others respond to your presence. It taught you that love must be earned, that joy is the result of success, that peace is something you find when everything finally aligns. But these teachings are not truths, they are illusions passed down through generations of forgetfulness. And now, in this sacred moment, you are being called to remember that you are not your name nor your story. You are not your pain nor your past. You are not your successes nor your failures. These are garments the soul wears for a while, but they are not the soul. The soul is unclothed, unbound, untouched. It is the eternal presence behind the mask, the stillness behind the movement, the awareness behind the thought. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who notices the thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are the space in which those emotions arise and dissolve. You are not even your body, as miraculous and sacred as it is. You are the light that animates it, the silent observer that witnesses its birth, its aging, its breath, and one day, its final exhale. And in that light, there is no fear. In that light, there is no striving. In that light, there is only being. You were not born to perform. You were born to remember. The lilies of the field do not stress their blossoming. The rivers do not struggle to flow. The stars do not try to shine. They simply are, aligned with their nature, obedient to the intelligence that breathed them into being. And so are you until you were told otherwise. But nothing real can be forgotten forever. The truth, like a seed planted in the dark soil of your being, will always push toward the light, even when you cover it with fear, even when you drown it in doubt, even when you deny its presence. It will rise, quietly, gently, powerfully. It will rise, and it is rising in you now. You may feel it as restlessness, as a yearning you cannot name, as a longing that no accomplishment or affection can satisfy. You may feel it as the quiet ache at the center of your joy, or the mysterious calm in the middle of your sorrow. It is the call of the soul, the invitation to wake up, not to a new reality, but to the one that has always been. You have never been disconnected from source, only unaware. You have never been less than divine, only distracted. You have never lost your way, only walked in circles, mistaking movement for progress. And now the invitation is to be still, to stop the seeking, to cease the striving, to rest in the presence of what is already whole, the presence that you are. Because in that stillness, remembrance arises. And in remembrance, healing begins. Healing is not something you find. It is something you uncover. It is what remains when you stop identifying with the wound. It is the recognition that you were never broken, only covered in the dust of forgetfulness. The soul is unbreakable. It cannot be damaged. It can only be hidden. And so this is not the beginning of your journey. It is the ending of your amnesia, the end of the trance, the dissolving of the illusion. You are not here to become more. You are here to become less attached, less afraid, less identified with the false. And in becoming less, you become vast, like the sky shedding its clouds, like the ocean settling after the storm, like the sun emerging from behind the veil. You remember, not with your mind, but with your being, not as a concept, but as a communion. You remember the feel of oneness, the flavor of silence, the perfume of the present moment. And in that remembering, you are free. Free from the tyranny of needing to prove yourself. Free from the addiction to approval. Free from the story that says you must do more to be worthy. You are already worthy, infinitely so. Your very existence is the evidence. The universe does not create mistakes. It does not make spare parts. It does not breathe life into something without purpose. You were spoken into being by a voice that knows only love. You were carved from the same light that formed galaxies, shaped oceans, and painted the wings of butterflies. And in you, all of creation meets. You are not a part of the universe. You are the universe, experiencing itself in form. You are the wave, forgetting that it is the ocean. You are the flame, forgetting that it is the fire. You are the song, forgetting that it is the music. But forgetfulness is not failure. It is the path. The forgetting is sacred. It is what makes the remembering so powerful. It is what turns the mundane into the miraculous. It is what transforms a simple breath into a holy return. When Jesus said, "The kingdom of God is within you," he was not offering a metaphor. He was offering a map. When the Buddha pointed to the emptiness behind the self, he was not suggesting nihilism. He was revealing the doorway to truth. When Rumi wrote, "You were born with wings, why prefer to crawl through life?" he was not being poetic. He was reminding you of your nature. You have wings. They are made not of feathers, but of freedom. They're not seen with the eyes, but felt in the heart. And they lift you not into the sky, but into the now. For the now is the only place remembrance can occur. The now is the temple. The now is the altar. The now is the sacred space where eternity touches time. You cannot awaken in yesterday. You cannot awaken in tomorrow. You can only awaken here, in this breath. So breathe. Let this moment be enough. Let it be the teacher. Let it be the mirror that shows you your true face, not the face of the persona, not the mask of identity, but the face of the form. When you rest in the now, you meet yourself, not the self shaped by others, but the self shaped by the divine. And that self needs nothing. It is not improved by praise, nor diminished by criticism. It is not elevated by achievement, nor degraded by loss. It simply is. As the Tao says, the way that can be named is not the eternal way. So too, the self that can be defined is not the eternal self. You are not a definition. You are a mystery, a sacred unfolding, a living paradox, both human and holy, both matter and spirit, both here and eternal. And the more you align with that mystery, the more your life becomes a reflection of it. You begin to live not from effort, but from flow, not from force, but from faith, not from fear, but from knowing. And in that knowing, life becomes miraculous again. Because you are no longer trying to control it, you are dancing with it. You are no longer resisting what is, you are embracing it. You are no longer asking, what do I need to do to be loved? But rather, how can I be what I already am, love itself? For love is not something you give or get it, it's something you are. And when you live as love, you heal everything you touch, not by trying to heal it, but by being the presence in which healing naturally happens. There is no method more powerful than presence. There is no medicine more potent than truth. And there is no truth more liberating than this. You are here to remember who you truly are. Not the version of you the world applauds. Not the version of you that wins the race. But the version of you that sits in silence and feels the heartbeat of the cosmos in your chest. That version is the real you. And it has never been lost, only waiting. And now it waits no more. And so we walk deeper now, not with footsteps, but with awareness. Each breath, an entry into a sacred remembrance that cannot be taught, only unveiled. It is not the mind that leads you here, but the surrender of needing to be led. For the soul does not travel forward, it descends inward, like water finding the lowest, most honest place to rest. And in that resting, all that is false begins to fall away, not in a blaze, but in a quiet relinquishing. The old roles, the weary narratives, the grasping for identity, all dissolving like fog before the morning sunday. The light that dawns in you now is not new. It is not an awakening in the sense of beginning, but in the sense of unveiling. You are unveiling yourself to yourself, one tender layer at a time, and there is no rush here. The infinite does not hurry, does not operate on clocks or calendars. It pulses in rhythm with the eternal, not the urgent. Your journey is sacred not because of where it leads, but because of what it reveals along the way. that you have always been whole, even in your forgetting. Let your healing be gentle. Let it be slow, like the thawing of frost under the touch of spring. There is no need to tear away the veils with force. They fall of their own accord when the light becomes too honest to be denied. Trust this unfolding. Trust the intelligence that breathes galaxies and flowers in your very lungs. It did not make a mistake in you. You are not an error to be corrected. You are a miracle to be remembered. And in that remembering, you begin to see the world anew, not through the filters of fear, but through the lens of presence. The same world, yes, but now lit from within by the awareness that what you see is not separate from what you are. The tree is no longer just a tree. It is your stillness mirrored in form. The stranger's eyes are no longer foreign. They are the reflection of your own essence gazing back. The breeze that touches your face is not an accident of nature. It is the breath of the beloved, caressing you into wakefulness. To live like this is not to escape the world, it is to sanctify it. It is to walk as one who carries the remembrance of truth through the marketplace, the hospital, the kitchen, the silence of heartbreak, and the music of laughter. You become a living prayer, not spoken, but embodied, not declared, but radiated. This is not about perfection. This is about authenticity. And authenticity is the most sacred offering you can give to life. For the world does not need more noise. It needs more stillness. It does not need more performance. It needs more presence. And presence is what you offer when you are no longer performing for approval. When you no longer need to be seen to know you are real. When you no longer need to be understood to feel understood. You begin to rest in yourself as yourself. And that rest is the foundation of true power. Not the power to dominate or convince, but the power to remain centered in a world that pulls. The power to choose stillness over reaction, compassion over control, trust over tension. This is the quiet revolution of the soul, the turning inward, the softening of resistance, the remembering of essence. And you will forget again. Of course you will. This is not a fault, it is part of the dance. The forgetting deepens the joy of remembering. Each return is richer than the last. Each moment of awakening carries the fragrance of all the times you wandered and came home. So do not curse the times you drift. Bless them. They are the currents that bring you back to shore with wiser eyes and a more open heart. The ego will not disappear in an instant. It will return with its stories, its demands, its defenses, but you will greet it differently now. You will see it not as the enemy, but as the child it always was, afraid, unsure, yearning for love in all the wrong places. And instead of banishing it, you will cradle it. You will say, it's okay, you can rest now, we are already whole. And in that act of inner compassion, the ego begins to relax. It no longer needs to be in charge. It no longer needs to guard the fortress of identity, because you are no longer guarding anything. You are open, vulnerable, real. And in that realness, the fortress becomes a temple. The walls fall, and the light gets in. This is the temple you carry with you now, the temple of the present moment, sanctified by your willingness to be, to feel, to listen, to not have all the answers, but to live the questions with grace. And as you live those questions, life answers in ways the mind could never orchestrate. Not always in words, but in synchronicities, in gentle nudges, in doors that open when you stop pushing. When you align with who you truly are, the universe no longer needs to shout at whispers, and you hear. This is the return, not to some grand revelation, but to the simplicity of what always was. You are not here to become a spiritual being. You are here to stop pretending that you are anything else. You are here to remember who you truly are. And as you remember, something shifts not just within you, but all around you. Life responds not to your effort, but to your essence. You begin to notice that doors open, not when you demand them to, but when your being is aligned with their opening. The people who drift into your orbit come not because you sought them, but because your light called to them in a language that needs no words. Circumstances rearrange themselves, not because you manipulated them, but because you surrendered your grip on control and returned to the harmony of trust. This trust is not fragile. It does not falter in the face of uncertainty. It does not need the approval of logic. It is ancient. It is the trust of the stars as they move across the heavens without maps. It is the trust of the sea that lies in darkness, believing in the sun it has never seen. It is the trust of the wave, surrendering to the shore. Knowing it belongs to the ocean, even in separation. And this is your trust now. Not because you understand all things, but because you finally understand that understanding is not the requirement, presence is. There's a holiness and simplicity that the mind often overlooks. It searches for fireworks, for signs in the sky, for voices from on high. But the soul speaks in the subtle, in the still, in the quiet spaces between thoughts where a deeper knowing resides. That knowing does not come as a conclusion, it arrives as a recognition. It is not shouted, it is felt. Like the way sunlight warms your skin without explanation. Like the way love wraps around your chest when words fall short. It is the knowing that says, I am already home. This home is not a place, but a presence. Not a destination, but a dimension of awareness. And you carry it with you wherever you go. In the hospital, in the heartbreak, in the laughter that erupts unexpectedly, in the silence that holds you when the world does not. This is the sacred soil of remembrance. You begin to plant your life in this soil, not in the shallow grounds of approval, but in the fertile depth of authenticity. And from here, everything begins to grow differently. You speak not to persuade, but to reveal. You listen not to respond, but to receive. You act not to prove, but to express. And in that expression, your life becomes a living scripture, each moment a verse, each breath a testament, each step a prayer. This is not metaphor, this is the reality of a life lived from soul. The soul does not care for resumes. It does not measure worth in likes or accolades. It does not ask for improvement, it asks for intimacy. Intimacy with truth, intimacy with presence, intimacy with the self beneath the self. And this intimacy transforms everything it touches. It transforms how you look at your reflection, not with judgment, but with reverence. It transforms how you greet your emotions, not with resistance, but with compassion. It transforms how you relate to others, not from need or fear, but from fullness. You become a sanctuary, not perfect, but pure, not unshaken, but grounded. A place where others can feel the invitation to come home to themselves simply by being in your presence. This is how the soul speaks without a voice, yet unmistakably. This is how the soul teaches without instruction, yet undeniably. This is how the soul heals, not through strategy, but through surrender. And as you continue to surrender layer after layer, you realize that your task here was never to accumulate identities, but to peel them back. Never to construct the perfect persona, but to allow the radiant essence beneath it all to shine through unfiltered. To be nothing more than what you are, and to know without doubt that this is everything. You are here to remember who you truly are. Not once, not twice, but in every breath, in every fall, in every rising. In every moment when the world forgets and you remember again, not with anger, but with grace. Not with resistance, but with a gentle smile that says, ah, yes, I wandered again, and now I return. And in that return, you come bearing gifts not for the world to admire, but for the soul to rejoice. The gift of presence, the gift of peace, the gift of a life lived not in fear of death, but in celebration of being. You are not the storm. You are the sky that holds it. You are not the identity that fears collapse. You are the awareness that watches all things rise and fall, knowing nothing is ever truly lost. The world may call this awakening. The soul calls it remembering. And you are here for this. To remember, and in remembering, to become the living embodiment of the truth that was never missing, only veiled. Now, the veil lifts. Now, you are light. And as that light rises in you, not as a flicker, but as a steady flame, you no longer question whether you are enough. You feel it, you embody it, not in arrogance, but in holy remembrance. For the light does not compare itself to other lights, it simply shines. The sun does not look at the stars and wonder if it is worthy to rise. It knows that its existence is the offering, and so is yours. You no longer need the world to reflect your value, because your value is no longer in question. You do not seek validation in the mirror of others' eyes. You carry your mirror within. And when you gaze into that sacred reflection, you see not perfection, but presence. Not achievement, but essence. Not the narrative you were given, but the truth that has always been yours. I am. That is the most complete sentence in the language of the soul. I am. Not I am this or I am that. Just I am. Full stop. Complete. Whole. And from that wholeness, everything changes. Because now you create not from lack, but from overflow. You love not to fill a void, but to share a fullness. You serve not to be significant, but because your significance is already settled. You no longer seek to be seen. You have already been seen by the source that made you, and that seeing is enough. That recognition, the gaze of the divine upon your being, is the only validation you ever needed. It whispered you into existence not as a mistake, not as an experiment, but as a unique and irreplaceable expression of itself. You are not a separate entity trying to get back to God. You are God in expression, temporarily clothed in form to remember its own reflection in the dance of life. Yes, there is pain, but even pain becomes sacred when held in the light of this remembrance. For pain, when honored rather than resisted, becomes a portal. It opens the heart. It deepens the presence. It softens the edges of identity until all that remains is love, not the kind you trade, but the kind you are. And so your tears too are holy. They are not signs of weakness, they are signs of surrender. They are the body's way of saying, I'm ready to let go of who I thought I needed to be, to let go of the stories that no longer serve, to let go of the resistance to what already is. You begin to bless even what once broke you, not because it was good, but because it brought you here, because it stripped away the inauthentic, because it cracked the shell of ego just enough for the light to seep in. And in that light, everything once feared is seen differently. The betrayals, the losses, the unanswered prayers. They were not punishments. They were catalysts. They were sacred winds guiding you, however roughly, back to your center. And this is where you now live. In the center, not in the extremes of fear and fantasy, but in the grounded, present truth of now. The mind may still speak, but you no longer follow every thought. The past may still echo, but you no longer mistake it for who you are. The future may still beckon, but you no longer need to rush toward it. You are here, and here is holy. Here is enough. Here is where the veil is thin, and the truth is thick, and the presence is palpable. You realize now that the path has never been linear. It has spiraled through shadows and light, through forgetting and remembering, through birth and rebirth, and everything in between. But the destination was never the point. The point was the deepening, the becoming aware of what never left you. And now you feel it, the unnameable, unshakable, unmoving truth at the center of your being. It does not speak in fear. It does not demand attention. It does not require you to earn it. It only asks that you notice who is noticing, that you become the witness rather than the storm, that you rest in the awareness rather than the reaction. And from that rest, something ancient awakens, a softness, a strength, a stillness that cannot be disturbed by noise because it is not made of sound. It is made of source, of the breath that breathes the breath, of the silence that listens to the silence. This is who you are. This is who you have always been. Not someone striving to be spiritual, but spirit itself, remembering its own reflection in the mirror of life. So take this moment, not to change, but to return, not to achieve, but to arrive, not to strive, but to sink deeper into being, deeper into truth, deeper into the remembrance that you were never lost. You are here to remember who you truly are, and who you are is already free. So now, as the path narrows into clarity and the journey gathers into stillness, let this final turning be not an ending, but a return, a sacred re-entry into the home that has always lived within you. You have not wandered in vain. You have not wept without purpose. Every step, every sigh, every sacred ache has led you here. And here is where the forgetting ends. Because when you no longer seek to be anything other than what you are, you become a vessel for the infinite to move through, to speak through, to love through. The trees do not wonder how to grow. The moon does not ask for permission to rise. The river does not need to understand the ocean before it flows. And neither do you. The remembering is not something you perform, it is something you allow. Allow yourself to be enough. Allow yourself to be held. Allow yourself to be seen by the only eyes that matter, the eyes of your own awakened soul. And in that gaze, may every unkind word melt. May every mask fall. May every conditioned belief dissolve like mist in the morning sunday. You are not here to argue with life. You are here to merge with it, To see that what you once called me was only a temporary shape, but the essence behind it all, that stillness, that presence, that quiet hum beneath the noise that is you. That has always been you, and that you has never needed fixing. It has only waited patiently through the noise and the striving and the ache for your return. Not because it lacked, but because it loved. Because it knew that the longing in your chest was not a sign of something missing. It was the song of something holy calling you back. The voice of the soul is never gone, it is only quiet. And now, in this sacred stillness, you hear it again. Not with your ears, but with your being. It is not loud. It is not forceful. But it is unmistakable. It says, you were never lost. You were only dreaming you were something smaller. You were never broken. You were only learning how to see through love's eyes. You were never alone. You were always being carried by the breath of God. And now, beloved soul, you are no longer asleep. You are awake, not in the eyes of the world, but in the eyes of the eternal. And once you are awake, nothing can be as it was. Because you see now with the vision of truth, you touch the world with reverence. You meet each moment not with judgment, but with awe. This is what it means to remember. To wake up not as a new self, but as your original essence, unmasked, unburdened, unafraid. To live not in resistance to what is, but in communion with it. To walk through the fire of life and realize that you were the flame all along. To bless the path behind you, not because it was easy, but because it brought you here. And here is enough. So breathe, stand still. Feel the ground beneath your feet. It has always known your name. Feel the pulse in your chest. It has always whispered truth. And feel this moment, whole and vast and sacred. It has always been waiting for your full attention. You are not late. You are not wrong. You are not unfinished. You are simply here. And here is holy. You are not who the world told you to be. You are who you have always been beneath the forgetting. And now you remember. You remember not just with your thoughts, but with your being. You remember in your stillness, in your softness, in your trust. You remember in the quiet yes that rises from your soul when you no longer resist what is. You remember in the lightness of a heart no longer trying to prove itself. And that remembering, that sacred, timeless, boundless remembering, is why you came. You are here to remember who you truly are. And who you truly are is the remembrance itself. The light behind the form, the silence behind the voice, the eternal presence wrapped in human breath. You are the love you thought was elsewhere. You are the peace you tried to find. You are the truth that was waiting to be seen. You are the presence that needs no story. You are the soul awake at last. And this is home, not a place, not a state, but the knowing that you were never anything less than divine. And now, you are free. You are not a product of the world. You are not a citizen of culture, a member of a tribe, or a name in a census. You are not the mask you wear in the marketplace, nor the role you play in the theater of approval. You are something older, deeper, wider than any label could contain. You are a soul dressed in temporary form, an eternal flame wrapped in skin and breath. And you belong not to the world, but to the universe. There's a silence inside you older than language, wiser than the intellect, softer than the world's roar. It is the echo of the divine. It is the hum of the cosmos vibrating in your being. You were born of this silence. You return to it when the world's noise collapses. And in that return, you are not diminished. You are expanded. The world will try to define you. It will tell you who to be, how to feel, what to chase. It will lure you into identities forged in fear, shaped by lack, and measured by the applause of others. But you are not here to conform. You are here to awaken. You are not here to compete. You are here to remember. Remember that you are already whole, already held, already holy. The ego shouts its demands. It needs to be right, to be praised, to be seen. But the soul simply shines. It does not argue. It does not compare. It does not need the validation of the world because it knows its worth is rooted in something far beyond it. The soul is the presence behind the personality, the sky behind the storm, the ocean beneath the waves of thought. Do you feel it now? That subtle nudge within you, that quiet knowing that says there is more to you than this. That knowing is not delusion, it is direction. It is the pull of the infinite calling you home. You belong to the universe, not because you are grand in the eyes of men, but because you are intimate with the infinite. The stars do not ask you to shine brighter, they ask you to remember that you are made of their light. The moon does not judge your phase as it waxes and wanes with you. The wind does not rush you, it invites you to breathe. You belong to the rhythm of existence, the dance of atoms, the stillness beyond form. And the moment you surrender your identity as a citizen of the world and reclaim your essence as a child of the universe, life begins to flow differently. You begin to trust, not in outcomes, but in presence, not in control, but in surrender. You stop asking, what do they think of me? And begin asking, what does my soul know to be true? Jesus said, be in the world, but not of it. The Tao whispers, do your work, then step back. The only path to serenity. And Rumi reminds you, you are not a drop in the ocean. You are the entire ocean in a drop. These are not poetic exaggerations. They are blueprints of awakening. They are invitations to step out of the trance of survival and into the grace of remembrance. To live as one who belongs to the universe is not to reject the world. It is to stop being ruled by it. It is to love without attachment, to serve without self-importance, to walk through the world with bare feet and an open heart, knowing you need nothing from it, because everything you are seeking is already within. Your healing does not lie in fixing your image. Your freedom does not come from achieving more. Your peace is not the reward of perfection. It is the natural state of the soul, remembered when the illusions fall away. You are not here to fit in. You are here to remember who you were before the world told you who to be. And who you are is stardust and stillness, silence and song, breath and boundlessness. You are the eyes through which the universe sees itself. You are the hands through which love touches form. You are not here by accident. You are not broken. You are not behind. You are becoming. So, pause. Let the world spin. Let the roles dissolve. Let the striving settle. Return to the place within you where time does not tick, where names do not matter, where the world cannot reach. There you will remember you were never meant to be defined. You were meant to be felt. You were never meant to be controlled. You were meant to flow. You were never meant to be small. You were meant to shine with the light of 1,000 suns. You belong to the universe, and the universe belongs to you. And when you begin to live as though the universe is not outside of you, but within you, a quiet revolution stirs beneath your skin. It is not loud, but it is powerful. It does not seek attention, but it commands reverence. You start to see life not as something happening to you, but as something emerging through you, as though every breath you take is the divine breathing itself into form. Every step becomes an act of participation in creation itself, not as a stranger walking borrowed ground, but as a being who knows they belong, deeply, eternally. There is a stillness that arrives when you no longer look for permission to exist. You stop seeking validation from temporary minds to confirm your infinite nature. The flowers do not bloom because someone claps. The rivers do not flow because they are liked. They exist because it is their nature to do so, and so do you. Your peace is not a reward. Your joy is not a prize. Your worth is not a negotiation. They are your inheritance, gifted not by the world, but by existence itself. And as the old illusions dissolve, you begin to move differently, not with urgency, but with grace. You no longer rush to fill the silence, because you understand now. The silence is sacred. It is in that space that wisdom arises uninvited. It is there that you remember truths you were never taught, but always knew. Truths not written in books, but etched into your being before time had a name. You begin to listen not just with your ears, but with your entire presence. You hear the voice beneath the voice, the meaning beyond the words, and you respond, not react from the deepest part of yourself. This is not a learned behavior. This is not technique. This is alignment. The soul's natural rhythm when freed from the distortion of fear, and the world, sensing this alignment, begins to reflect it. Not because it has changed, but because your eyes have. You no longer see enemies, you see beings in pain, reaching clumsily for the same light you've touched. You no longer see setbacks, you see sacred detours. You no longer see life as a puzzle to be solved, but as a poem to be lived, stanza by living stanza. What once felt like burdens now feel like teachers. What once triggered resistance now becomes an invitation to soften. What once demanded an answer now dissolves into the peace of simply not knowing. And this not knowing is no longer a threat, it is a gift, a doorway into the vastness of what cannot be explained, but only experienced. And the more you dwell in this space, the less fragmented you feel. The more you begin to remember that your spirit was never designed to be compartmentalized, broken into parts, defined by roles. You are not just a parent, not just a worker, not just a dreamer. You are a field of consciousness moving through a temporary dance of form. The essence of you is untouched by titles, unshaken by transitions, unchanged by the passing seasons of identity. You begin to walk through life with an open palm, holding nothing too tightly, clinging to no outcome. Not because you don't care, but because you finally understand what caring truly means. It means showing up with presence, not attachment. It means offering your energy without demanding a return. It means trusting the intelligence of the universe more than the insecurities of the ego. And in this sacred detachment, you become more connected than ever, not out of need, but out of knowing. Knowing that you and the tree share the same breath, that the stranger's eyes carry the same light, that even your pain is not separate from the love that holds it. Everything begins to speak to you, not in language, but in presence. The wind becomes a teacher, the sunlight, a lover, the silence, a sanctuary. And you at last feel not like a guest in this life, but a participant in its holy unfolding. And slowly, the boundaries you once held so tightly, the borders between self and other, between sacred and ordinary, between spirit and matter begin to dissolve. You realize the walls were never real. They were only the architecture of fear, constructed brick by brick through years of forgetting. Forgetting that there is no inside and outside, no here and there, no you and them. There is only one vast being appearing in countless forms, and you are not merely a part of it, you are it. Localized for a brief and beautiful time, you begin to live with your heart exposed. Not as a weakness, but as a strength that no armor could ever match. You learn to cry not from despair, but from the sheer beauty of it all, from the unbearable intimacy of being alive, of being a witness to sunsets and kindness, to music and silence, to endings that ache and beginnings that open like spring. Everything becomes holy because you see through different eyes, the eyes of the soul, which do not judge, do not divide, do not demand. They simply behold. And in that beholding, miracles happen. It is no longer about fixing anything. Healing, you come to see, is not the act of becoming someone new, but the grace of embracing who you've always been beneath the noise. The pain you've carried was not your enemy, it was your messenger. The heartbreak was not your undoing, it was your opening. The doubt was not a flaw, it was the soul's way of cracking the surface to let the light through. And the more you embrace this, the more life becomes less about arriving and more about allowing. You stop looking to cross a finish line and start wondering at each step. Every moment becomes an altar, every breath an offering. You do not rush through the grocery store, through the traffic, through the ordinary days. You move as though the divine is in everything because you've begun to see that it is. There is no such thing as mundane when you are awake. And yes, life will still bring storms. This path does not shield you from loss, from uncertainty, from the inevitable unraveling that comes with being human. But now you meet the storms with rootedness. You do not resist the rain, you open to it. You do not curse the thunder, you listen to what it shakes loose. For you know that even in the breakdown, there is breakthrough. Even in the loss, there is the presence of what cannot be lost. And so you begin to live from a deeper rhythm. Not the rhythm of deadlines and expectations, but the rhythm of breath and trust. A rhythm that honors rest. A rhythm that makes space for stillness. A rhythm that knows the soul grows not through speed, but through depth, through listening, through surrender. This is the rhythm of the universe moving through you. And once you align with it, you no longer fear the unknown. You welcome it. Because you know that the same force that grew your bones in the womb, that lights the stars, that brings tides to the shore, is the same force guiding your every step. You don't need to know where you're going, you only need to keep saying yes to the unfolding. And in that yes, something changes. You stop negotiating with your destiny. You stop pleading for signs. You stop waiting to be worthy. Because you realize you are the sign, you are the worth. You are the miracle you've been waiting for. There is a holiness in your being that cannot be touched by circumstance, a light that no darkness can extinguish, a love that asks nothing, proves everything, and waits patiently for you to stop searching and start seeing. And when you live from this place of union, of presence, of undivided awareness, you become a sanctuary for others. Not because you try to be, but because you cannot help but be. Your energy becomes a balm. Your presence, a lighthouse. You are not leading people to yourself, you are leading them back to themselves, simply by being who you are without apology or disguise. And in the quiet, in the stillness of that presence, you hear the most sacred truth of all whispered through the silence. You belong not because of what you've done, not because of what you've proven, not because of how perfectly you followed some path. You belong because you are here, because you exist, because your being is the universe expressing itself in form. And the more you embody that truth, not as an idea, but as your lived reality, the more the world begins to heal. Not through force, not through fighting, but through the radiance of remembrance, one awakened soul at a time. And so you begin to trust your own unfolding. You no longer rush to escape the moment because you recognize that the moment is where eternity meets you. You stop treating the present as a stepping stone to something better and begin to meet it as the only place anything real has ever happened. Here in this breath is all the love you've been searching for. Here is the safety you've been craving. Here is the sacred simplicity of enough. You no longer seek completion in another's eyes. You look into your own reflection and see something you once overlooked. Wholeness, not perfection, not polish, but something far more powerful, the raw, unfiltered truth of being. The untouched core that has never needed to be fixed, only felt. And in that feeling, healing arises, not from effort, but from surrender. Not from striving, but from allowing. Your soul begins to guide you more clearly now. Its voice, once drowned beneath the mind's chatter, begins to rise like a melody remembered in the dark. It speaks not in volume, but in vibration. Not in commands, but in clarity. You learn to listen not for answers, but for alignment. You stop asking, what should I do? And begin asking, what brings me closer to truth, to love, to life? This is the path of returning not to a place, but to presence. Not to a belief system, but to being. And in this being, you rediscover a wisdom the world forgot. A wisdom that flows like water, unresisting, patient, pure. A wisdom that tells you not to conquer the world, but to embrace it as yourself. The universe has no interest in you becoming something you are not. It is not measuring your progress by how much you accumulate, achieve, or impress. It is only ever asking one question. Are you remembering who you are? And when your life begins to answer that question with a soft but resounding yes, the need to compete falls away. The desire to compare dissolves. The fear of missing out vanishes because you see clearly now you are not here to be like anyone else. You are here to be what no one else can be yourself, fully, fiercely, freely. And you start to love the parts of you that were once hidden in shame. You stop editing your light to make others comfortable. You stop negotiating your intuition in exchange for approval. You rise into yourself not with arrogance, but with reverence. And that rising liberates not just you, it liberates everyone who witnesses your authenticity. You don't need to preach. Your peace will speak for you. You don't need to convince. Your clarity will illuminate. You don't need to perform. Your presence is enough. And those who are ready will feel it. Not as an idea, but as a remembrance in their own bones. Your light becomes a mirror. Your healing becomes a permission slip. Your being becomes a silent invitation back home. Not home as a location, not home as a past, but home as a state of consciousness. A return to the truth that you never left. That even when you wandered far, the universe was never apart from you. That even when you forgot, the divine never did. That even in your darkest hour, the light within you never went out. It only waited patiently for your surrender. And now you are beginning to surrender, not in defeat, but in devotion, in trust, in the holy act of saying, I no longer need to be anyone else. I am ready to be who I truly am, Co. And when that moment comes, when the veils fall, when the striving ends and the stillness returns, you will know. You are not becoming the light. You are the light. And the world will never be the same because you chose to remember. And as the light of this remembrance grows steadier within you, You begin to sense the sacredness not only in the serenity, but also in the struggle. You start to see that even the moments that once made you flinch were sacred initiations, each one placed along your path not to harm you, but to hollow out space for deeper truth. Pain becomes less of a punishment and more of a portal, a breaking open, not a breaking down. It was never the darkness that was your enemy. It was your forgetting that even there, the light still lived. You no longer resist life's complexities. You begin to understand that growth does not mean perpetual ease. Sometimes it means being stretched, unraveled, stripped of everything false so the true can emerge. And you stop asking the winds to calm you, ask for roots deep enough to hold you when they rise. For you know now, the soul does not blossom in comfort alone. It often awakens through the sacred pressure of becoming. You look around and realize that everyone you meet is also on their way home, each one carrying invisible burdens, each one trying to find their own rhythm in the music of being. Compassion blooms not as an obligation, but as a natural overflow of your own healing. You stop needing people to be perfect. You start seeing them as reflections, some showing you what still needs to be softened in you, and others reminding you of what already has been. This is the quiet alchemy of the soul, where judgment turns into understanding, where distance becomes connection, where the old urge to fix is replaced with a willingness to witness. You no longer try to change the world by force. You change the world by becoming so deeply yourself that others are inspired to do the same. The language of your life shifts. Instead of urgency, you speak through presence. Instead of proving, you express. Instead of asking, how can I get more? You begin to wonder, how can I embody more of what I already am? This shift is not theoretical. It is felt in your posture, your choices, the way you breathe when no one is watching. You begin to cherish the space between moments. You no longer live only for the peaks. You find holiness in the valleys. You let silence speak. You allow endings their dignity. You no longer rush to fill the void. You sit with it, knowing that within it lies the womb of creation. And from this sacred center, new desires arise not to possess, but to participate. Not to escape, but to engage. Not to rise above life, but to melt into it fully, unguarded, awake. Your dreams become less about validation and more about contribution. You ask not how high you can climb, but how deeply you can serve. Even your concept of time begins to unravel. The future no longer lures you with false promises, and the past no longer drags at your heels. You find yourself living not in linear progression, but in circular expansion. Each day becomes not a task, but a temple. Each interaction, a ritual, each breath, a sacred contract to remain open. And there, in that openness, you begin to glimpse the real miracle. That life is not waiting to bless you later. It is blessing you now, always now, in forms you had not learned to see. In the breeze that brushes your cheek, in the laughter that spills without warning, in the way your heart softens at the sight of a stranger's kindness. The divine does not always arrive as thunder, it often tiptoes in with grace. And what was once called ordinary begins to shimmer. And as the shimmer of the ordinary begins to reveal itself, you come to understand that grace is not a rare event, it is the natural fragrance of awareness. It is what seeps through the cracks when resistance gives way to reverence. You stop waiting for some grand revelation and begin to recognize that every step, every sigh, every unnoticed moment is steeped in the sacred. You no longer need the extraordinary to awaken you, because you've been reintroduced to the miracle of what already is. You begin to walk softer, not out of fear, but out of awe. The ground beneath you, once taken for granted, becomes a living pulse, as if the earth itself is whispering, I carry you. And you believe it now. You feel yourself being held not by people, not by outcomes, but by the living presence of something vast, tender, and immeasurable. You do not need to name it. You only need to rest in it. This rest is not inactivity. It is the deepest form of participation. It is presence without pretense, engagement without entanglement. You move, yes, but not from striving. You speak, but no longer to impress. You act, but from a place of wholeness, not hunger. The noise within you quiets, not because life becomes simple, but because your identity is no longer tangled in complexity. And from this stillness, your purpose begins to rise, not as a role, not as a job, not as a task to accomplish, but as a natural overflow of being. You understand now that your purpose is not something to find, it is something to remember, something to feel into, something that arises effortlessly when you are no longer performing life, but participating in its flow. You do not need to make yourself useful to prove your worth. Your very being is already of service. Your peace is medicine. Your authenticity is liberation. Your joy is a beacon. You were not born to fix the world. You were born to bring your presence to it, to infuse it with your light, not by effort, but by alignment. And this alignment does not come from learning more, doing more, becoming more. It comes from less, from unlearning, from unclenching, from undoing the knots tied by fear and expectation. It is in the letting go that your soul takes its rightful place, no longer a whisper drowned out by striving, but a song that guides your every step. You do not need a map when you are the compass. You do not need to ask where the path begins, because it starts beneath your feet, wherever you are. You begin to walk not in pursuit, but in embodiment. You begin to move not towards something, but from something ancient, something silent, something true. And in this state, life no longer feels like a test you must pass, but a mystery you are invited to live. You hold paradox gently now. You understand that joy can sit beside sorrow, that uncertainty can coexist with peace, that not knowing can be its own kind of knowing. You have stopped trying to force life into shapes that make sense to the mind and started letting life carve shapes in your soul. And the more space you allow for the unknown, the more magic reveals itself. And now, as you stand at the edge of this sacred remembering, something deep within you bows not in defeat, but in devotion. The long journey of becoming has led you not away from yourself, but inward, where the map fades and the miracle begins. You are no longer chasing the horizon. You have become the horizon. No longer reaching for the stars, you have realized they are within you, burning quietly in the silence of your soul. You see now that you were never lost. You are only wandering through the illusion of separation, tracing the outlines of who you are by touching everything you are not. Every detour, every ache, every unanswered prayer, they were not wrong turns, but invitations. Each one led you deeper into this unveiling, this sacred shedding of the false, until only the true remained. You feel the ground beneath you, as if for the first time, not just as soil and stone, but as the living memory of something timeless holding you in its breath. You are rooted now, not in certainty, but in truth. Not in knowing all the answers, but in finally trusting the one who has been asking the questions. There is a softness to your presence now, a radiance not born of effort, but of surrender. You do not need to shine, the light moves through you freely because you have stopped trying to control its direction. You are not performing for the world's approval. You are listening to the rhythm of your own essence, and that rhythm is enough. It always has been. You do not need to explain yourself anymore. Not to those who misunderstood your stillness, not to those who could not see your depth, not even to the voice within that once whispered, "Not yet, not enough." That voice no longer governs your steps. It has grown quiet in the presence of something greater, the knowing that you are already whole. You are no longer seeking belonging. You have become belonging itself, a sanctuary for the weary, a mirror for the forgotten, a reminder for the lost. Your life, just as it is, becomes a blessing, not because it is free from pain, but because it is free from pretending. You carry the universe now not as a concept, but as a lived truth. You walk as one who knows they are not a fragment of something broken, but a thread in the great tapestry of all that is. You breathe not to survive, but to sanctify. You love not to be completed, but to remember that you already are. And in this final return, not to a destination, but to presence, you find peace. Not the fleeting peace that depends on silence or safety, but the eternal peace that was never absent, only obscured. The peace that says you are exactly where you are meant to be. You are not behind. You are not late. You are life expressing itself perfectly. So take this moment, not as an ending, but as a return. Lay down your armor. Loosen your grip. Let the winds of grace move through you. Trust the rhythm that has guided the stars and shaped your soul. You belong to the universe not as a visitor, not as a seeker, but as a beloved expression of its infinite heart. And the universe has never once stopped belonging to you. Breathe and remember, you are home. You are whole. You are holy. You are free.